What if I told you the moment you stop explaining yourself, stop defending yourself, and stop reacting is the moment your real power begins? What if silence is not weakness, but the weapon that changes everything in your life? Silence is your power, and most people never discover it because they are too busy trying to be heard, too busy trying to prove their worth, too busy trying to win arguments that never deserved their energy in the first place. And the truth is, the loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest one, because real strength does not shout, it does not beg, it does not chase validation, it stands firm without saying a word. And when you begin to understand this, your entire life starts to shift. Because you realize that every time you react emotionally, every time you argue, every time you try to convince someone of your value, you are giving away your power piece by piece. But the moment you choose silence, the moment you refuse to engage in negativity, something powerful happens. People begin to feel your absence instead of hearing your defense. They begin to question themselves instead of attacking you. They begin to sense a strength they cannot control, and that is what makes silence so dangerous in the most beautiful way, because silence creates mystery, and mystery creates respect, and respect creates power. And when you stop explaining your decisions to people who have already decided not to understand you, you protect your energy. And when you protect your energy, you protect your future, because not every battle deserves your voice, not every opinion deserves your response, and not every insult deserves your attention. And the world will test you, it will try to provoke you, it will try to pull you into drama, it will try to make you react, but the disciplined mind knows that reaction is surrender and silence is control. And when you master control over your reactions, you master control over your life, because silence forces people to sit with their own thoughts, and most people are uncomfortable there. They want noise, they want chaos. They want arguments because chaos distracts them from their own insecurities. But when you respond with silence, you hold up a mirror, and suddenly they see themselves, and that is far more powerful than any clever comeback you could have given. And silence also builds emotional intelligence, because instead of speaking immediately, you observe, you listen, you analyze, and in observation there is wisdom, in listening there is understanding, and in understanding there is strategy. And powerful people move strategically, not emotionally. They know timing is everything, they know that sometimes saying nothing now gives them the advantage later. And silence also protects your goals, because when you talk too much about your plans, you leak your energy, you invite doubt, you attract unnecessary opinions. But when you move in silence, your progress speaks for you. Your results speak for you, and success becomes your loudest announcement. And there is something deeply intimidating about someone who does not feel the need to broadcast every move, because it signals confidence, it signals security, it signals that they are not looking for approval, and approval is the addiction that weakens so many people. They want to be liked, they want to be accepted, they want applause. But applause fades, approval changes, and public opinion shifts like the wind. So if your confidence depends on noise, it will collapse when the room goes quiet. But if your confidence is built in silence, it becomes unshakable. And silence also strengthens relationships in ways most people never understand, because when you argue less and listen more, you begin to truly hear what others are saying beneath their words. You understand emotions instead of just statements, and sometimes the most loving response is not a speech but a calm presence, sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect is not retaliation but distance, because distance delivered in silence teaches lessons that shouting never could, and when you stop reacting to gossip, gossip loses oxygen. When you stop reacting to provocation, provocation loses power. When you stop reacting to criticism, critics lose influence, because energy flows where attention goes, and silence is the art of redirecting your attention back to yourself, back to your growth, back to your purpose, and that is why people become confused when you no longer react the way you used to. They expect the old version of you, the defensive version, the emotional version, the reactive version. But when you evolve into someone who chooses silence, you disrupt their expectations. And disruption shifts dynamics, and suddenly you are no longer easy to manipulate, you are no longer easy to control, and that is when your true power emerges, because silence is not about suppressing your voice forever, it is about choosing when your voice deserves to be used. It is about understanding that not every situation requires your explanation, not every misunderstanding requires correction, not every accusation requires defense, and sometimes the strongest statement you can make is no statement at all, because people reveal themselves over time, truth reveals itself over time, and silence gives time the space to work in your favor. And while others waste energy talking, you build, while others argue, you improve, while others complain, you rise, and there is something unstoppable about a person who channels emotion into discipline instead of drama, and discipline grows in silence, focus grows in silence, clarity grows in silence, and when you sit quietly with yourself, you begin to hear your intuition, that inner voice that gets drowned out by constant noise, and that intuition will guide you better than public opinion ever could, because silence connects you to yourself, and when you are deeply connected to yourself, you no longer need constant external reassurance, you no longer need to prove your worth, you no longer need to win every debate, because you understand that peace is more valuable than being right, and sometimes silence protects your peace more effectively than any argument ever could, and this does not mean you become weak or passive, it means you become selective, and selectiveness is strength, because you conserve your energy for what truly matters, for your goals, for your healing, for your growth, and the world may misinterpret your silence at first. They may call it arrogance, they may call it indifference, they may call it weakness. But eventually they will recognize it as stability, they will recognize it as maturity, they will recognize it as power, because consistency in silence builds a presence that words cannot compete with, and when you walk into a room without the need to dominate conversation, when you can sit comfortably without seeking attention, when you can observe more than you speak. You radiate a quiet authority that people feel even if they cannot explain it, and that quiet authority changes how people treat you, it changes the opportunities that come toward you, it changes the respect you receive, and most importantly it changes how you see yourself. Because you realize you are no longer controlled by external triggers, you are guided by internal strength, and that is freedom. And freedom is the highest form of power, so the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember that your silence is not surrender, it is strategy, it is not weakness, it is wisdom, it is not avoidance, it is awareness, and when you master the art of silence, you master the art of self-control, and when you master self-control, you become unstoppable, because nothing outside of you can shake what is solid within you, and that is why silence is your power, not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understand that your value does not need constant announcement. Your strength does not need constant display, and your future does not need constant explanation, so move with intention, speak with purpose, and when the moment does not require your voice, let your silence speak louder than any words ever could, and when you begin to live this way, when silence becomes your discipline instead of your reaction, you start noticing a shift not only in how others treat you but in how you treat yourself. Because silence teaches you patience, and patience is a rare currency in a world addicted to instant responses and immediate validation, and the person who can wait without reacting holds an invisible advantage, because while others are rushing to defend, explain, or attack, you are gathering information, you are strengthening your emotional foundation, you are allowing the storm to reveal who it truly is before you decide how to move, and that pause, that sacred pause between stimulus and response, is where your power lives, because in that pause you choose who you want to be instead of letting circumstances decide for you, and the more you practice this, the more unshakable you become, because emotional control is not about suppressing feelings, it is about mastering them, it is about understanding that anger, frustration, disappointment, and even excitement do not have to dictate your behavior, they can simply pass through you like weather, and you remain grounded. And grounded people are dangerous in the best possible way because they cannot be manipulated easily, they cannot be provoked into self-sabotage, they cannot be dragged into chaos they did not create, and when others realize they can no longer pull you into drama, they either elevate their behavior or they distance themselves, and either outcome benefits you, because silence acts as a filter, it filters out those who only connect through conflict, it filters out those who thrive on reaction, and it attracts those who respect composure, maturity, and depth, and over time your circle becomes calmer, stronger, and more aligned with who you are becoming, and this is another hidden gift of silence, it refines your environment, it reshapes your relationships, it redefines your standards without you ever needing to announce new boundaries. Because sometimes boundaries spoken loudly are ignored, but boundaries enforced quietly are felt deeply, and when you stop over-explaining your boundaries, when you simply act in alignment with them, people adjust or they exit, and you no longer chase understanding from those committed to misunderstanding you, because you realize that clarity does not always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from observation, sometimes it comes from distance, sometimes it comes from allowing people to reveal their true intentions over time, and silence gives you the space to see patterns that constant noise would hide, because when you are always talking, you miss the subtle cues, the inconsistencies, the red flags disguised as charm. But when you observe more than you speak, you see everything, and awareness is power, because awareness protects you from repeating mistakes, awareness protects you from investing energy in the wrong places, awareness protects you from trusting too quickly or reacting too impulsively, and this is how silence becomes not just a communication strategy but a life strategy, because it sharpens your intuition, it deepens your perception, and it strengthens your discipline. And discipline is what separates temporary success from lasting impact, because anyone can react, anyone can speak loudly, anyone can defend themselves passionately, but not everyone can remain calm when misunderstood, not everyone can stay composed when criticized unfairly, not everyone can hold their peace when provoked, and that restraint is what builds character. And character built in silence is stronger than reputation built in noise. Because reputation depends on what others say about you, but character depends on who you are when no one is watching, and silence often reveals your character more than your words ever could, because in moments when you could retaliate but choose not to, when you could embarrass someone but choose dignity instead, when you could escalate but choose peace instead, you are shaping your identity, you are strengthening your integrity, and integrity is quiet by nature. It does not seek applause. It does not seek recognition, it simply exists, steady and firm, and the more you align with that steady firmness, the less external chaos affects you, because you understand that not every comment deserves correction, not every lie deserves exposure, not every attack deserves defense, because time and consistency expose truth far more effectively than heated arguments ever will, and when you trust time to reveal what words cannot fix, you release the burden of constant justification. And that release feels like freedom, because so much stress comes from trying to control how others perceive you, trying to control narratives, trying to control opinions, but silence teaches you that you cannot control perception, you can only control your behavior, and when your behavior is consistent, respectful, and disciplined, perception eventually aligns with reality, and even if it does not, your peace remains intact, and peace is priceless, because success without peace feels empty. Recognition without peace feels exhausting, and relationships without peace feel unstable, but when you cultivate inner peace through silence, you carry stability into every area of your life, and people begin to feel safe around you, they begin to trust you, because your calm presence becomes predictable in the best way, you are no longer reactive, you are reliable, and reliability builds influence quietly, because influence does not always come from loud speeches, sometimes it comes from steady presence, from consistent action, from composed responses, and those who master silence often find that when they finally do speak, their words carry weight, because they are not diluted by constant chatter, they are not weakened by emotional outbursts, they are precise, intentional, and impactful, and that is another form of power, the power of selective expression, because when you speak less, people listen more, when you react less, people respect more, when you explain less, people observe more. And observation often leads to deeper understanding than explanation ever could, and you begin to realize that silence is not about disappearing, it is about choosing presence without noise, it is about embodying confidence without performance, it is about holding strength without display, and that kind of strength transforms you from someone who seeks attention into someone who commands it naturally, not because you demand it but because your energy feels different, your energy feels grounded, deliberate, and self-assured, and self-assurance is magnetic, because in a world full of insecurity and comparison, someone who is comfortable in silence stands out, not through volume but through vibration, not through noise but through stability, and stability becomes your anchor when life tests you, because life will test you, it will challenge your patience, it will challenge your ego, it will challenge your restraint, but every time you choose silence over unnecessary conflict, you strengthen your anchor, and eventually you reach a point where storms no longer shake you the way they used to, because you have trained yourself to respond, not react, to observe, not assume, to protect your energy, not scatter it, and that training happens quietly, day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment, until one day you realize that you are no longer the person who needs the last word, you are no longer the person who needs constant validation. You are no longer the person who feels threatened by misunderstanding, because you know who you are, and when you truly know who you Silence becomes natural, because confidence does not argue, it does not beg, it does not chase, it simply stands firm, and when you stand firm in silence, you send a message stronger than any speech could deliver, a message that says I am grounded, I am disciplined, I am aware, and I am not easily moved, and that message reshapes your life in ways you may not immediately see, but over time you will feel the difference. In your relationships, in your opportunities, in your mindset, in your emotional stability, because silence, when chosen consciously, becomes more than absence of words, it becomes presence of power, and as you continue walking this path, you begin to understand that silence is not just something you practice in moments of conflict but something you carry as a lifestyle, a way of moving through the world with awareness instead of impulse, with intention instead of insecurity. And the deeper you embrace it, the more you realize that the loud world around you is constantly trying to pull you back into reaction, into proving, into defending, into explaining yourself to people who have already chosen their perspective, but you no longer feel the urgency to correct every misunderstanding because you have learned that understanding is not forced, it is earned over time through consistency, and consistency does not shout, it simply shows up again and again with calm strength. And this is where your true transformation becomes visible, not because you announced it, not because you argued your growth into existence, but because your energy changed, your presence changed, your responses changed, and people feel that shift even if they cannot define it. They notice you are harder to provoke, harder to read, harder to shake, and that quiet resilience creates a new dynamic in every space you enter, because when someone realizes they cannot control your emotions, they lose leverage. And when they lose leverage, you gain freedom, and freedom from emotional manipulation is one of the greatest forms of power a person can achieve, because it means your mood is no longer hostage to someone else's behavior, your peace is no longer dependent on someone else's approval, and your direction is no longer dictated by someone else's opinion. And that is what silence protects. It protects your inner world from being constantly invaded by external noise. It gives you space to think before you speak, to evaluate before you act, to reflect before you decide, and reflection is where wisdom is born, because without silence there is no reflection, without reflection there is no growth, and without growth there is no evolution, and you are not here to remain the same, you are here to evolve beyond the version of you that reacted too quickly, trusted too blindly, explained too much, and overextended energy in places that did not deserve it, and that evolution requires discipline. And discipline often looks like restraint, it looks like choosing not to send that message, not to return that insult, not to join that gossip, not to defend yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, and every time you choose restraint, you reinforce your strength, because strength is not measured by how loud you can be but by how controlled you can remain, and the person who remains controlled in chaos becomes the calm center others unconsciously respect, even if they once doubted you, even if they once underestimated you, because over time silence proves what noise only promises. Silence demonstrates stability, maturity, and depth is rare. Depth requires introspection, depth requires self-awareness, depth requires comfort with your own thoughts, and many people avoid silence because they are uncomfortable alone with themselves. They need distraction, they need validation, they need constant engagement to avoid confronting their own fears. But when you become comfortable in silence, you become comfortable with yourself, and that self Comfort eliminates desperation, and when desperation disappears, so does the need to chase people, chase approval, chase arguments, chase recognition, because you realize what is meant for you will not require you to beg, and what truly respects you will not require constant explanation, and this realization changes how you move. You begin to move with quiet certainty instead of loud persuasion. You begin to let actions speak instead of emotions spill. You begin to let time reveal instead of forcing clarity in every moment, and that patience becomes your silent weapon, because patience unsettles those who expect immediate reaction, patience frustrates those who thrive on chaos, patience protects you from decisions made in anger or fear, and over time your life begins to feel less dramatic and more intentional, less reactive and more directed, less exhausting and more aligned, because silence aligns you with your purpose. It filters out unnecessary noise so you can hear what truly matters. Strengthens your focus so distractions lose their grip. It refines your communication so when you do speak, your words carry weight and precision, and people begin to listen not because you are loud but because you are measured, not because you dominate but because you are deliberate, and this deliberate presence becomes your signature, your quiet confidence becomes your identity. And you no longer need to convince anyone of your growth because your behavior reflects it naturally, and perhaps the most powerful part of all is that silence gives you control over your narrative without fighting for it, because instead of arguing against rumors or correcting every false assumption, you allow your life to speak, you allow your results to answer, you allow your character to defend you, and character defended by consistency is far stronger than reputation defended by emotion. And there will still be moments when you must speak, moments when boundaries require clear expression, moments when truth demands a voice, and when those moments arrive, you will speak not from ego but from clarity, not from anger but from conviction, not from insecurity but from self-assurance, and that difference will be felt immediately, because words spoken from a foundation of silence carry depth that reactive words never could, and that is the balance you learn. Silence when it protects your peace, speech when it serves your purpose, restraint when it strengthens your discipline, expression when it aligns with your values, and through this balance you become someone who cannot be easily shaken, easily provoked, or easily distracted, because your power is no longer scattered through constant reaction, it is concentrated through intentional living, and concentrated power changes everything. It changes how you handle conflict, how you pursue goals, how you build relationships, how you view yourself. Because you are no longer seeking external confirmation of your worth, you are operating from internal certainty, and internal certainty is quiet by nature. It does not beg to be seen, it simply exists with calm assurance, and when you reach this level, you understand that silence was never about withdrawing from the world, it was about mastering yourself within it, it was about choosing strength over impulse, wisdom over noise, peace over pride, and control over chaos, and that mastery becomes your foundation. The foundation that supports your growth, your success, your relationships, and your future, because when you control your tongue, you control your reactions, and when you control your reactions, you control your direction, and when you control your direction, you control your destiny, and destiny shaped in silence is powerful because it is built intentionally, not emotionally, and so as you move forward from this moment, remember that you do not need to win every argument to win in life. You do not need to respond to every voice to be heard. You do not need to explain every choice to be understood. Sometimes the strongest move is no move, sometimes the loudest message is no message, sometimes the greatest strength is stillness, And when you fully embrace that truth, when you trust your calm, when you trust your discipline, when you trust your growth enough to let silence do its work, you step into a level of power that cannot be taken from you because it was never dependent on noise in the first place. It was built within you, quietly, patiently, and intentionally. And that is why silence is your power, not just today, not just in conflict, but in every decision, every relationship, every challenge, and every opportunity that lies ahead, because the person who masters silence ultimately masters themselves, and the person who masters themselves becomes unstoppable.